Hey everybody, welcome back to Nikki T Live. I'm your host Nick Taylor, and today I'm hanging out with Kilian and I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name. Is it Valkhof or is it
Yeah,
Valkhof?
that's perfect.
Okay, Valkhof. Okay, perfect. I always try to check before I got it's a busy day, but yeah, no, Kilian, thanks so much for joining me today. For folks that might not know who you are, would you mind just giving a little rundown of who you are, what you've been doing, what you've been up to, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kilian. I'm from the Netherlands, which all of you can probably hear. For the past 5 years, I've been working on a browser for developers called Polypane. And it's a web browser, so you install it on your own device, but it's also an app built with web technologies because that's really all I can do,
Mhm.
and I make it work.
Cool, cool, awesome, awesome. So I've got a chance to start. I've started to mess around with Polypane a bit, and again, I said Polyplane before the the stream, and you had a little laugh because it rolls off the tongue for I think English people by accident. But I guess first question is I'm curious about the name. Is it Polypane because of like different dimensions in front end? Is that essentially it?
Well, so when I first started Polypane, it was really just like three iframes and a piece of duct tape. So so the idea is it's literally like poly, multiple, pane, like viewports, but then a
Okay.
different word.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
And
cool.
together they both start with a P, so it has some nice alliteration as well.
Oh, cool, cool. Awesome. B1 Mind is in the chat. That's Brent
Nice.
Morton.
Hi.
He's a fan of Polypane, so you got a Polypane rocks in the chat there. So yeah, the before we kind of dig into like some of the like I because I've been using the tool and we're gonna kind of talk through some scenarios where maybe you can show me some stuff to help me as I'm building out stuff in the front end.
Hmm.
But before we get into that, I was wondering if you could, because I find this super interesting, and I feel like the crowd might as well. But Polypane, I'm assuming is an Electron app because I see
Yeah.
it looks like it's got Chromium in there, so probably Electron.
Hmm.
So I guess I guess maybe kind of start from like I'm curious like how did Polypane start out? Like you said, it was just you threw a few iframes together, and then I imagine at some point you realized, okay, this doesn't scale, or if I'm gonna make this into an actual product, you need to do something a little different.
Hmm. Well, so I started with Polypane in 2015,
Okay.
and at that point, Electron had just launched. And before that, I was using something called Node WebKit,
Okay.
which is like the predecessor of Electron.
Okay.
And I was using that to build desktop apps. And then, even before that, I used something. Uh, oh, I forgot the name. It was by Adobe. I think it was like Adobe Flex.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
this is
Yeah. Yeah. I
like
remember that. Yeah.
2005 or something,
Okay.
which was like, you can use either Flash or this weird unspecified HTML CSS rendering engine that we have at
Mm-hmm.
Adobe to build desktop applications. So I've always been building stuff for desktop using web technologies.
Okay.
And then in 2015, I was looking for a project to try Electron out because it looked much better than Node WebKit, which worked well, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't have like a very developed API or a very developed story around like building and deploying for multiple platforms,
Okay.
which is something that Electron does really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was looking for a project to use Electron in, and then at the same time, I had just switched over from Photoshop to Sketch for design
Okay.
work.
Yeah.
And then in Sketch, what they have is artboards, which now like every app has artboards. But back then, like Sketch had artboards and the other apps didn't. And artboards were really nice because you could put like your mobile design, your tablet design, and your desktop design like in one big overview,
Okay.
and you could see them really nicely side by side. So I really enjoyed that. But then I went back to the browser, and I was back looking at like one of them at a time again.
Okay.
So that's where I had my project. It was like, you can't use iframes anymore because like even back then, um, there were already big restrictions on like cross origin embedding, etc. So that was a
Yeah.
pain to do. But in Electron, there were ways to deal with that and to do that without like removing all the security,
Mm-hmm.
which is always an option, but is rarely like the the correct option.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
totally.
so yeah, so I decided, let's just make an Electron app that's essentially like an input for the address and then three iframes that display that URL, and
Mm-hmm.
started using that. Really liked it and went from there.
No, that's cool. It's yeah, I've worked with Electron before. Well, I mean, like anybody that's used like VS Code or Slack is probably, I think a lot of people, at least devs, are aware that those things are built with Electron. But
Mm-hmm.
I worked in fintech for about a year, and we were building out Electron apps, and it because we had like it was all web based, but one of the interesting things was some of these like banking systems wouldn't allow certain websites, but they would
Mm-hmm.
approve an application. So just by wrapping the application in an Electron app and saying here's the application, that was okay, which made me kind of chuckle a bit.
Yeah.
Um, but it was a nice experience because you do get some desktop functionality. Like I remember one of the things I implemented was like notifications. Like I think when like because it was like WebSocket based, a lot of numbers
Mm-hmm.
coming in and stuff, and um, it it seemed from what I remember, it seemed not that bad in terms of like being intuitive because like it was all Node.js or JavaScript what you were
Yeah.
building anyways. So I did find it was cool. The thing I wonder about because people have talked about this before. This is not something new, but people have mentioned many times that Electron apps can hog memory. So like people will
Mm-hmm.
joke about like, oh, I'm on my M1 or my M2 and I have VS Code and Slack open. I guess I should close something or
Yeah.
um, and not to knock those applications. What I mean is like it's been something that's been an issue prior, and I know VS Code at least. I can't speak for Slack, but I've read about VS Code, and they put a lot of effort into making it
Mm-hmm.
like very performant because of those things.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if that's something you've had to dig into, or has it been
I
like
mean,
kind of pretty smooth sailing?
no, I mean that's always a concern. So the thing is that Electron itself doesn't really need a lot of memory or CPU or whatever.
Yeah,
Like 90% of an app's memory cost is the web page that it's displaying,
yeah,
which is like your app. It's the thing you built and that you're distributing. And Electron is just a little shell around it.
yeah.
Um, and then yeah, so if you do that in a way where you maybe not care as much about the download size because it's a desktop app anyway,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, if your app ends up being a couple dozen megabytes, then that is going to reflect in the memory usage. So
Yeah.
they're like using Electron is not an excuse to not have to make a lean app or to just, you know, embed all the React icons instead of just the ones you use. And,
Yeah,
don't do tree
exactly.
shaking because you might need it. No, there, all the same rules still apply because it's still being run in a browser.
Mm-hmm.
And then for Polypane, the tricky thing is I'm not just running my UI.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also running like your web page, and I'm running your web page not once, but like 3 or 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
And each of those instances are full proper Chrome tabs.
Yeah.
So they're the one of the things that always, or that I have a hard time explaining to people, is that they'll be like, yeah, but if I open my website in a tab in Chrome, it's faster. Like, yeah, because I'm opening it 3 times, and
Yeah.
just because, like, the laws of physics, that's going to be somewhat slower. Not too slow, I hope,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's a limit to what I can do when I need to do the same thing multiple times versus just
Yeah.
once.
Yeah. No,
Um,
totally.
but
That
like
makes sense.
that's
Yeah.
that's something that, like, going back to the major cost of an Electron app is your code, not Electron's code.
Okay. Yeah.
That's something people tend to forget or skip over, because there's also a bunch of Electron apps that people don't even realize are Electron apps till
Okay.
they're pointed out. Um, it's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No,
then,
totally.
I can go on. Like, the other thing is, if your machine has like 32 gigabytes, then like Electron using 300 megabytes of that, you know 300 megabytes is a lot if you're running a Pentium 2, but it's
Hmm.
it's not a lot on like an M1 or an M2.
Yeah. No, for sure. And like, obviously not every developer has like an M1 or M2. I'm fortunate enough I've got like an M2 thanks to work. So, I mean,
Hmm.
I think this whole whole other topic, but like, I saw a tweet from somebody or post, whatever people call it these days. And they're saying like, if your employer's not buying you a decent computer, that's actually hurting them, because like, if you're sitting there on an old machine waiting like for everything to compile or run
Yeah.
again, there's real dollars lost there. So, anyways, that's just an aside. But
I
but
mean,
but
so
yeah,
part of that is true, but I also think that it's good for developers to not have the best machine there is. So I'm
yeah,
still running on like an Intel based Mac,
okay,
um, because it still works, and eventually I'll get a new one when it no longer works. Um, but
yeah,
if you always have the fastest device, then you're always going to make stuff that runs really, really well for you, and maybe doesn't run so well for people that are less fortunate than you in a
yeah.
sense.
No, it's a good
So
point,
I've
and yeah,
so for example, I also have a Windows device, which is this thing.
okay,
It's a Surface Go,
okay,
and it's stuck on Windows 10 because,
okay,
you know th- I thought, let's just get a Microsoft device because that'll be supported really well for a very long time. Uh,
hmm.
but no, like a year after I bought this, Windows 11 came out, and they're like, we're not gonna support a Surface Go.
Oh, no way.
Uh,
Oh, that's unfortunate.
yeah, so it has an Intel chip, but it actually has an Intel Pentium branded chip, just
Okay,
to drive the point home. But it does work really well to make sure that, you know if you run Polypane in really bad circumstances, that it still does what it's supposed to do.
yeah, no,
And
for sure, yeah,
that I think that's important for developers to keep in mind, to make sure that you don't always have, the benefit of the fastest device.
yeah. No, it's a really good point, and to your point too, I had the first MacBook I ever bought was in 2010, and I bought a MacBook Pro 2010. This was like,
Hmm.
I was like, oh, I'm gonna get a Mac because I'm going to build iOS apps. I never did, but I fell in love with the Mac, and I had that Mac. I still have the Mac. It still works,
Hmm.
and it was only once I started working at a year or two before working at Dev 2 that I got like Ended up getting a MacBook Air, but like the machine was still
Mm-hmm.
working fine. My kids were using it, and it
Yeah.
still works. It's just like I probably wouldn't use that for web development now because it just would be like just too painful. But it brings up a good segue to talk about Polypane because um, like for example, like in the developer tools, you can throttle your network connection, so you can say like I'm slow 3G or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess this is a good way to kind of start talking about Polypane. So like you said, Polypane is an Electron app, so it ships with Chromium.
Yeah.
The Chromium tabs that are open for the different portal views here, or views, I should say. Like if I just switch us over to pairing view here,
Yeah.
and let me just open this, and yeah, so I think yeah, you should be able to see most of my screen here. Yeah. So I've just opened up Polypane. I'm working on some feature work. I'm just finishing up some polish on some stuff for some work. And so the first view I got was I think maybe I had clicked it already, but I get a view with three panes. So like,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll zoom in a bit here. Can I zoom? Oh no, I can't zoom in, right? Or can I?
No, you can't zoom beyond 100%, but you can change the text size.
Oh, okay. So I
If you
guess
go
these are good
to
first questions that I didn't know about. So, okay, so for the text size, where would I
yeah,
go?
if you go to the view menu and then adjust text size,
Okay. All right.
and then
Okay.
you can just like bump it up.
Okay. And then okay, I see. Okay, it's changing the UI. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's perfect. Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, so we have these different views here, and so I guess the first thing is I've dabbled in this a bit, and to give some context of my usage of Polypane so far, um, when I was working at Dev 2, I was leading front end over there, so I was doing a lot of front end, obviously, and I think
Mm-hmm.
I might have heard about the tool at the time, but I hadn't really dug into it, and then I was more recently at Netlify, but I wasn't doing front end, so I was like really more working on like kind of like middle endish stuff like build plugins and like just
Yeah.
making sure frameworks work. But now that I'm at open source, I'm kind of heading front end over there. So I can't remember when I came across Polypane again, but uh, I reached out to you to just say, hey, let's go talk about it. But so I haven't really used the tool that much. I mean, I have a general idea of how things work. Like I've switched, between the different views where I can get,
Mm-hmm.
multiple device views and so on. But in regards to the, excuse me, like the developer tools, so like we do have browsers running here. So do I have
Mm-hmm.
access to literally all the same developer tools that I normally would in like a Chromium based browser? Or
Yes. So each pane has their own Chromium developer tools, but I've also built my own developer tools.
okay.
And what those do is they work across all panes.
Okay.
So Chromium is built with the idea that like one web view has one DevTools, which is a very reasonable view, but
Yeah.
that's not how Polypane works. So in Polypane, I have built my own element inspector. I've built my own console to make sure that you can add it across panes because that's really what you want to do. If you make a style change, you want to make sure
Oh, okay.
that
Yeah.
that style change works on all screen sizes. Um, because what often happens is that you build for a specific size, then you go build for another size, and then if you have to make a style change, you
Hmm.
need to go back to that original size to make sure that you didn't accidentally break anything with
Okay.
that
Yeah.
those new styles. So
Okay.
what you
Gotcha.
actually want to do is just apply the styles everywhere and see them everywhere so that you can be sure that they do what you think they do.
Okay.
And
So
to yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so if I wanted to open up the developer tools for, because like normally I do Command Shift I on my Mac to open up the
Yeah.
browser dev tools. Is that what I would do to get your tools, or would that open up the actual developer tools for each one?
So it depends on your settings, because Polypane lets you choose which one you
Okay.
prefer as the default. But they will default to the Polypane tools, but you don't have to do that,
Okay.
um, because you can just hover over any element in a pane and hold Option or Alt on Windows.
Oh, okay. Let me do that. Sorry. Okay, I see. Okay, now we're getting some information about it.
Yeah. So
Okay.
right off the bat, I show you a ton of information that you might like want to glance at, like the dimensions, the fonts, the color, the
Okay.
margins, accessibility info, like is this a thing I can click?
Yeah.
Does this have the right accessible name? And then uh, if you click, it focuses the element in the elements inspector, and there you can
Okay, yeah.
see all the CSS and style it, etc.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So, okay, and then this looks, it's not one for one necessarily with the actual developer tools, but I imagine
No.
there's quite a bit there. Okay. So, for example, like if I just said, let's see here, let me find a class in here. We're using Tailwind, so I'm just trying to find a text class that we have in here. But, or you know what, I'll just say, let's change the gap. So,
hmm
okay, so if I do want to change it, because normally I double click in,
No, you go to the styles in the style editor rather than like editing a
okay,
string. Uh,
okay, gotcha. Okay, so I could say gap, and I could say 20 rem, which is ridiculous, I know. And
yeah.
then,
Then
okay,
you
so
press
that,
enter.
okay, now did that apply it to, okay, yeah, it did. You can't tell
hmm
it's this card in the middle, it's just, it's completely gone now. But
Now
if I,
click on that 20 rem and use your arrows keys to go down.
oh, cool, cool. Okay, so now you see it coming back in because I put a ridiculous gap there, obviously. But okay, cool.
And
Okay,
then if you
nice,
want to
nice.
dial it in further, you can hold Option and then your arrow keys,
Okay.
and then it'll change
Oh,
by
neat.
point one.
This is super handy because like it's not just like, hey, I want to increment it. It like, like just to make it easier to increment, but this is a lot easier because I can look at the screen as I'm just kind of like dialing it down, like you're saying.
hmm
No, that's super useful.
And then
Okay.
you can also hold Command for going by 10, and then Shift for going by 100, or vice versa. I don't use those a lot.
Okay, yeah, I see. I'm going by a lot here. Okay, yeah.
hmm
Okay. No, that's cool. No, that's super handy because like once you're like moving around and once you're more comfortable with the tool, I can see that stuff being like super snappy and stuff. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
oh,
So
we
it's
gotta,
all about, you do have to learn a new DevTools, because it is a new DevTools. It's just like switching to Safari or Firefox or whatever.
yeah,
There's I make different choices.
yeah,
I think they're better choices, but you still have to learn them. One thing here that I really like that no other browser does is if you
okay,
can inspect that monorepo tools title.
yeah, okay, and just inspect like I normally would.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then you can see in the elements panel that there's now a text area.
yeah.
Edit it.
Oh, okay. It- wait, where am I seeing it?
Yeah, there where your mouse is, like right there where it says monorepo tools in the middle of the.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I can. Okay, and this is kind of neat if you're like maybe I need to have ellipsis to in case it's too
hmm
long or something or just trying out ridiculous font sizes. And this is actually uh this is super useful actually because I actually had to truncate the text on here recently. So like you'll see here if I start pasting, it's gonna start doing the ellipsis and it's way
hmm
easier to do that than because like the way I've typically done this is either I do it, you have the hot module reloading in your that I do in VS Code maybe
Yeah.
through the framework we're using Next.js, but a lot of times I'll just go into the developer tools, I'll double click, it's a little finicky. I start
Mm-hmm.
typing and then it loses focus because I need to apply it. And
Yeah.
so this is a lot
Yeah, so
nicer.
like what one of the things that I don't like about the Chrome DevTools is that there's all these modal actions that you can do. Like you can double click into the tree view and then that
Yeah.
becomes selected, but you can't do anything else. Like it's selected, you need to deal with this now.
Yeah.
So in the Polypane DevTools, there's not really anything that's modal in that sense.
Okay. Yeah. I
Um,
think that's good too because you
it's
kind of
just
stay in the context of what you're doing.
mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, because like you're doing stuff in the elements panel, but you're not doing stuff in the elements panel while looking at the elements panel.
Yeah.
You're looking at your website because you want to figure out what's happening there. So you don't want to, have to manage what's going on there. You might want to click somewhere on your website and then go back to typing.
Hmm.
And then this is just much easier.
Yeah. And so is this supporting inner text or does this support inner HTML? Like if I do like span,
There's no HTML support in
okay.
this, so it will only show for text content for now.
Okay.
I'm still thinking of adding like HTML editing here, uh, but
So it's a little more
it's
complex.
it's more complex because you can very quickly like erase, for example, a whole bunch of JavaScript listeners if you delete
Oh
an
yeah, yeah.
entire subtree accidentally. Yeah, you can control Z that subtree back, but
Yeah.
it'll be new DOM elements and all your listeners will be gone, and
Yeah.
that's annoying. So
That's a
still have
good
to
point.
figure out like what the right way to do that is.
Yeah, cuz I don't think you'd want to get in the business of like re-registering event handlers, but like I wonder if it could be like more like a power mode where like kind of like, if you
Hmm.
do this, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, no guards, but
Yeah. Yeah.
and then
That's a
also like there's a bunch of other stuff in this. So this central part I call the navigator.
yeah.
So for example, you can quickly see like the font size, the line height, the text color, the background color, whether or not um, your colors pass contrast.
Okay, yeah, triple A
Um,
here. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
and
cool.
then on the right hand side, the dimensions, and then a whole bunch of like things where you can make a screenshot of the element or turn on layout debugging or
Okay.
look at the box model. Just like stuff you want to do with the element that isn't editing its properties,
Yeah.
which is what we do in the lower part, or switching over to a different element, which is what the tree view does.
Okay. Um there was a comment in the chat. Todd, who's a friend of mine, just wanted to give a shout out to Polypane. Todd
Thanks,
says
Todd.
Polypane is the best browser available today. So, I did have a question about, so like you've obviously made these bespoke developer tools.
Hmm.
Are you literally rewriting them completely? Like the UI you've built, obviously, but
Hmm.
like, are you able to tap into any existing developer tools APIs? Because I know Chromium is like it's all C++ typically. I imagine. I
Yeah.
don't know if there's like endpoints to hit or something. Not endpoints, but is there some
So
kind of JavaScript bridge?
there is something called the Chrome DevTools protocol,
Okay, yeah.
but I only use that for a few select parts. So all of this CSS editing, all of the style editing, all of the like DOM manipulation, that's all my own code. And then there's
Okay.
specific things like um, forcing a hover state or adding like a flex or a grid overlay. And for those, I do use the Chrome DevTools protocol.
Okay. Yeah. I've I've never used the protocol, but I know like uh I know that it like the Chrome debug protocol allows you to basically replicate the same thing everywhere. So like Like for example, like if you're debugging, because like you can debug V8 like Node.js in the browser,
Mm-hmm.
which I think newer developers aren't aware of that. But so like I could be in VS Code using their built-in debugger for Node.js, which is in the Chrome debugger protocol. But if you
Mm-hmm.
have the Chrome DevTools open with V8 enabled, you can see them both stepping through at the same time. So it's pretty neat. But that's cool that you're leveraging it in certain parts. I was gonna ask you too, and for yeah, I guess right now I'm in dark mode. I don't know if I set that on Polypane or is that something you can configure like the different like light mode or dark mode?
Yeah, so but by default, it just takes whatever your device uses,
Oh, okay, okay.
and
Yeah,
then
that
you can
makes
switch
sense. Okay,
with Command I if you want to.
okay. So if I do, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. No, I've been I don't know. I like dark mode, but I've kind of flip flopped in my editor more recently. Like I've been in light mode a lot more. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But I don't know if that's because I'm getting older. That like sometimes the
Well,
it's better on my eyes.
yeah. So I've been in light mode for for my code editor and for Polypane for I
Yeah.
think 3 or 4 years now. So I work right next to a window, and
Okay.
then at some point I caught myself writing code like this,
Okay.
and then I decided that
Oh, you got muted for some reason. Oh, we lost Killian for a second, so just hold on here. So while Killian's on his way back, I'll just kind of summarize for folks that might have just been joining. So yeah, so we're looking at Polypane today. So it's a browser, but it's a browser for front end developers or anybody interested in front end development. So it's got tools where you can have several Chromium tabs open. It is based on Electron, so these are Chromium tabs. So I think if you did want to test this in something like Firefox, like once you've gotten all the breakpoints and stuff and everything adjusted, you can, I think it's still good to test it in other browsers. But in terms of like just general web dev, like building out stuff, whether you like it or not, it's just a fact of life that there's other browsers, and it's unfortunate, but I know Firefox has been having a bit of a rough go lately. Um, I'm just gonna see if Killian. I'm gonna switch us back to just. I'll go to solo view for a second here. All right, cool, cool. Okay, we'll see if we can get Killian back here. Hopefully. Let me see if he's made it back yet. Where'd you go? Um, Here, let's go back. Okay, he's not back yet. I'm just gonna check on Twitter because that's where he dropped me a message. And okay, there's there. Oh yeah. Okay, he says the lost power and restarting now. The router that is. I'll just say no worries. Just chatting with the chat. See you soon. Okay, cool. Yeah, it happens. This well, one, this is what I like about live streaming, not losing a guest because the router went down, but I just like that it's never super polished. I mean, like obviously, we try to talk about some interesting things and stuff, but it's real life, things just don't work sometimes. And it's kind of funny when I used to work at Dev 2 with Christina Gorton. When we did the live stream, we'd even stop the Twitch stream sometimes because she lives in Costa Rica, so there would be sloths outside sometimes. So she'd be like, "Sorry, I gotta go outside for a minute. I have to go speak to my kids so we can go look at some sloths." So I would do something like this where I would talk for a few minutes about something, and then she'd come back. But anyways, I digress. Yeah, so Killian should be back shortly. But yeah, so I know Todd's been using Polypane for quite a while. I haven't used it that much myself. Like I said, I only really started using it more recently, and I found it super helpful. I've been building out some features here. So like one of the things I built out is this sidebar here, and you'll notice like based on the different breakpoints. So like on the larger screen, you see there's this explore and highlights up there, and there's none in there. But as you get to the smaller screens, they come down into here, into the sidebar. So this has been super helpful building out stuff, and yeah, it's been pretty cool. Uh, I am curious to dig into a bit more into Polypane because there's like I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. Um, you know, um, if I know you've been using it for a while, Todd. Like obviously, Kilian probably knows quite a bit about Polypane since he created it. But if you have any tips or anything that you want to share, go for it. And yeah, I'm just gonna check on Kilian. Yeah, okay, he's still restarting the router. That's cool. Um, if I had sponsors, I would say, no, let's take a break and get a word from our sponsors, but I don't. But anyways, um, yeah, so yeah, this page you see here, this is stuff I've been working on for open source recently. So like I said, I've been finding it super helpful using Polypane to build this out and stuff. And like I was mentioning to folks before some other people joined is like uh oh, there we got Killian back here. Hey, how's it going? Oh, he's almost back. He's I see his camera now. Oh, he'll be there shortly. I think I will him. Oh, he's moving. All right, he's alive. Okay, cool. Let's see if I'm not sure if I have to bring you back on to the stream or not. Okay, no, you're still there. Cool, cool. Uh,
Yeah,
don't sweat it.
sorry about that. I don't know what happened, but suddenly my router didn't do anything anymore.
No, it's all good. I was just telling people in the chat when I used to work at Dev 2, one of my old coworkers who I did the live stream with, Christina Gordon. Sometime because she was in Costa Rica, sometimes she would lose power, but also there's a lot of animals in Costa Rica, including sloths, and so like where she lived, every now and then she'd be like, "Oh, I just got to go outside for a few minutes. There's a sloth on my driveway," because like her kids would want to see it. So I would just end
Uh-huh.
up talking for a few minutes, like, "Yeah, we're just taking a little break. Christina's going to look at some sloths and stuff." So,
Yeah.
anyways, but yeah, don't sweat it. I was also saying like for live streams, like obviously we don't want people losing their internet, but like one of the things I like about live streaming is it's not like a perfect YouTube video, so like people
Yeah,
expect things not to be perfect. So, anyways, all that to say, welcome back.
thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, so we were I forget where we were, but we had talked about yeah, so we were editing the text and stuff. You mentioned that there's no support for HTML yet because it's a little more complex. Like you don't want to
Hmm.
lose the event handlers and stuff. And I'm glad you brought that up too because again, I'm generalizing here, but I think there's like a generation of web developers that like I know a lot of people that I've spoken to from boot camps and stuff, and you know their experience with web development is really coming into just React, and so
Yeah.
like you know on click in JSX is I don't not everybody, again I'm generalizing, but they might not be aware of like that's actually attaching to a DOM element with an event listener and so on, and like
Hmm.
just deleting the DOM like you mentioned actually just destroys that whole thing. So I'm glad you brought that up because and it's because it's there's some things I think you know this is all nothing to do with Polypane, but I think people eventually have to learn the fundamentals. But I think for me at least,
Hmm.
I think the important thing is just go build something, and you're gonna learn either way. Like if you start with React and you build something, that's awesome, and then as you start fixing issues, you're gonna be like, oh, what does this map of array thing do? And then you start digging into what does this mean in JavaScript, or like speaking of accessibility, like I'm clicking on the checkbox, but the label, it doesn't click it when I do it. Those are things I think you pick up over time. But anyways, um, but it's actually pretty cool that you have some accessibility information in here too, because
Hmm.
I mean, I think it's important. I know a lot of people, including Todd, who's in the chat, thinks it's important,
Yeah.
but there's like a lot of people that some I don't think anybody doesn't care, but I think sometimes a
Hmm.
lot of it is just people aren't aware,
Yeah.
like hey, this looks really cool with this funky background and this funky text, and then and then all of a sudden it doesn't even pass, like a standard or something. So, anyways, um,
Yeah. So the what what causes the most friction in Polypane is that regular browsers do a really good job of making the web acceptable to their user.
okay, yeah,
And that works in really small things. So, for example, if you write website.cmo and then press enter in
yeah,
Firefox, it'll just fix it for you. They'll be like, yeah, you wanted to type com, you didn't, but we're just gonna pretend you did. And then the
okay, yeah, yeah,
same with like if there's servers that don't have the right settings for www, where it doesn't forward or one of them doesn't actually serve the domain, your browser will
yeah,
figure that out for you and then send you along and pretend like nothing's wrong,
yeah,
because that's just the best experience for you as a website viewer. Like you don't
yeah,
care that this dev didn't properly configure their server. You just want to go to their site. You don't care if it's with www or without.
yeah,
And you
exactly, yeah, yeah,
definitely don't care that that is a significant difference, because why is that a significant difference?
yeah,
Um, in Polypane, I take the opposite approach. Like if you didn't configure your server correctly, then Polypane will break, because
okay,
that's stuff you as a developer need to know. The same with caching, for example. If you and this is something that I think Chrome does very wrong. If you're in Chrome and you open your DevTools, it
yeah,
automatically disables your cache.
yeah,
And that means that there's a ton of cache related bugs that you will never encounter,
yeah,
despite your server probably not being configured correctly. Um,
okay, yeah,
like there, for example, there's loads of people that run like MAMP or WAMP on their own
mm-hmm,
device for local development, which is
yeah,
fine. Like it's a good stack. Uh, we all we were all raised on it.
mm-hmm,
Um, but those come configured with settings for being run as a proper web server.
yeah,
And that means that they will also have caching settings to make sure that servers don't explode when there's more than 10 people trying to
yeah,
open the website. But
yeah,
you
totally,
don't want your local server to send caching headers. That would be super frustrating, right?
mm-hmm,
Like Next server doesn't do that. Remix Dev server doesn't do that, because that would be
yeah,
dumb.
exactly,
Uh, but if you don't configure your server on your local device and it does send those cache headers, then you're just like sort of annoying yourself. And you should fix that, because
mm-hmm,
you'll encounter issues otherwise.
yeah,
So
no, totally,
and Chrome DevTools like cleverly works around that by saying like, we'll just pretend like you configured your server correctly,
mm-hmm,
and you don't have to care about that. Whereas in Polypane, I take like the opposite stance, which is like, yeah, you're the dev, you should care about this. And that means that, Polypane is going to show you the behavior that you configured, knowingly
mm-hmm,
or not.
yeah,
And
yeah, no, that
that's
makes
like, this
sense,
is a super long intro to, that's also how it works for accessibility. Because if you are uh, serving the web and opening web pages and you have perfect vision and you have 10 digits that you can use, then a lot of stuff is just going to work for you. And
mm-hmm,
if you're a developer, and if you're a developer in like the Western world, you're more than likely to have good vision, you're more than likely to have all your digits, etc. So you're going to have a really different experience and not realize that, stuff doesn't work if you can't use a mouse perfectly. That stuff doesn't work if you don't have sight. That stuff doesn't work if you don't have like 300 megabits upload. So
Yeah.
that's why I think uh, that is also something Polypane should surface, because it's all part of this larger topic of quality. Like, we want to
Mm-hmm.
build good stuff, and so our tools should help us build good stuff, even
Yeah.
if there's things that we don't realize are quality issues. Then we should still, be confronted with that in a sense.
Yeah, I definitely like that approach, and I know what you mean about the developer tools where it disables it by default, right, in Chrome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I I disable the cache sometimes when I'm testing stuff because I
Mm-hmm.
like because even like you said, most of the meta frameworks won't you won't cache when you're doing local development, but like I know like in some cases, like when I was working on stuff at Netlify, like there's a CDN and there was like caching headers and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I needed, in certain scenarios, I need to see like what does
Yeah.
it look like, without it. Like I need to see what it looks like originally, And so like
Yeah.
I guess it comes down to understanding your tools, but I do like that you default to like let your things break because I guess it's kind of like it's an education as well a bit for some things you might not be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like maybe it's frustrating initially, but then like I think you'd probably learn something from it, like you were saying,
Yeah. So that
and
that's what I hope happens. So, for example, in Polypane, there's three settings you can set your cache to.
okay,
Like, you can have like the normal behavior, you can have it turned off persistently,
okay,
or you can have it turned off for this session, and then the next time you open Polypane, it's back to the default again.
okay. So you don't forget to put it back on. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay, that's handy. Okay, so if I
because
wanted to
because
change
like
those
there's
settings,
there's super valid reasons to have caching disabled. Like, you
yeah,
you
yeah,
don't
for sure.
always control your server, and then you still need to get work done.
Yeah, no, totally. So if I wanted to modify those cache settings, where would I go? I clicked on the dev tools here, but that's I think more like the element inspector or no,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
element
So
inspector.
for in Polypane, like, because the entire browser is DevTools essentially, like, not everything has to live in that little square.
Okay.
So in Polypane, you would just go to the global edit menu and then disable cache.
Okay. Okay, so and then here I can't zoom in unfortunately. Sorry, folks. But because this is the Mac OS, but so in the disable cache, I have three options. I can say not disabled, which is the default, only for this session, and persistent, like Kilian was mentioning. So, okay, that's cool. And okay, and then you
We're
have
we're
all the other
still on
stuff.
the R2 faces view as well.
Okay, all right. So, oh, I got Trust Codes who just joined too. Hey, how you doing, Alex? Um, yeah, if you're just joining us, Alex, yeah, we're just talking, we're going through kind of like all the things Polypane can do, and we were talking a bit about what it's built with. So it's Electron, and Killian was mentioning how there is the developer tools that come with the browser, or like with Chromium, but he's also built out separate tools so that there's other things you can do, like synchronize between the existing tabs, and there's some neat things like being able to edit the inner text, which is like we were talking about, it's kind of clunky to do in the existing developer tools for Chromium because you have to double click into the element and then you type it, and then you have to lose focus so that it actually applies it, and then here we can just type and it just updates automatically, which is super nice. And there's some accessibility information and all kinds of information here. um, Cool. So I guess like typically like when you're working with Polypane, because I know you know the tool really well, obviously, because you created it. Um, like what are because I haven't used it too much yet. So like my typical usage so far has been I've kind of had this three panel view open, because I've been testing like our small
Mm-hmm.
breakpoint, a medium breakpoint, and then a large breakpoint, and this has been super helpful because it's just nice to see it in real time here.
Yeah.
Update for the different viewpoints, because like otherwise, like typically what I've done in the past is, like I'll go to the developer tools, I'll switch to mobile view, and then I'll switch it, and then it's like it works, but it's kind of clunky, because then I'm like, well, how does it look compared to like the large view, and then I can't. It's hard to develop that way, so I like that you can do
Yeah,
them
and
side by side like this.
yeah, and that also means that you do it more often. Like you check mobile view more often, and maybe you see something like going wrong when you do
Yeah,
it instead of like 30 minutes later when you need to go, oh, where's that code again? Let me go back
yeah, yeah.
to, what I was
Oh,
doing, etc. Um, so yeah, that's so the defaults are the defaults because that's how I like using Polypane.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
it is an app that I'm in like all day, every day.
yeah.
So everyone gets the defaults that I think make sense and that I enjoy the most. Um, you can change them all. So no worries if like my choices aren't your choices.
Mhm.
Um, what I tend to do in Polypane is, I usually have two modes when I'm working on websites.
Okay.
Like one is I'm creating. For example, I built a new like fancy landing page recently, and
Okay.
then I'm always in like uh, the three pane view.
Okay, like I am right now. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
depending on if I need to check additional stuff, I'll add a pane or I'll remove a pane. But then the other like large website stuff I do is all about documentation. Like Polypane has a lot of documents, so I need to write a lot of documentation.
Okay.
Um, and then I just switch to full view, which you can do by pressing the letter B for browser.
Okay. Oh, nice.
Uh,
Okay,
and then
cool.
it
I didn't
switches to
know
like
that.
just like your regular browser view.
Okay.
Um, and but I still have all my Polypane tools, so I can still add debug tools, or I can still like what I usually do is I write my documentation in Markdown in VS Code,
Okay.
but Markdown in VS Code doesn't have spell checking, and I need spell checking.
Yeah.
So I write that in VS Code, and I have my VS Code and my Polypane side by side, and I see it live on the website. And then in
Okay.
Polypane, there's a debug tool called Edit Content.
Okay.
And what it does is, it makes the entire website content editable, but it also
Oh,
turns on
okay, yeah.
spell checking.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
So that
Cause
way I can like very quickly go over the website, see, what things I misspelled, and then fix them. And it
okay.
becomes this very quick, iterative loop.
Mm-hmm. The the neat you mentioned spell check, and it made me think of something, because the other day I was because like I use one password like a lot of people, and I was like, I had, because our app uses GitHub to log in, so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna open up one password, copy it, paste it in, and then I was thinking like it'd be really good if I could add. It'd be really neat feature if you could add browser extensions, and then I discovered you could. It was like amazing, because like that was one point of friction for me. I was like, if I'm
Hmm.
working on sites and I need to log in, it's doable going to it's first world problems obviously, but I was like, it'd be nice if you could incorporate them, and you can. So like I have one password, I have like the Preact Dev tools, and I have the React Dev tools. I
Yeah.
forget how to show them. They're over here in the top right, but I can't remember how you get to show extensions or manages it.
So
Oh yeah, there
you
we go.
still need to switch over to uh, sharing your screen with the stream.
Oh yeah, that would be a good idea, eh? Instead of me talking. So it's over here. It's over here. Yeah, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
Good call.
so
Good call.
like the DevTools extensions, they are part of the Chromium DevTools. So you would need to go to the in the sidebar. You're now on the Elements tab, and you need to go to the DevTools tab,
Okay.
and then there you have access to like the React DevTools, etc. Just like you're used to in Chromium.
Yeah. And this is just super neat. I mean, I know people are familiar with browser extensions, but this just makes uh Polypane even more valuable to me now. Because
Hmm.
and like even
So,
switching to this view, like the B view where you had like well,
hmm
I'm in the B view now, but like I was treating Polypane where's the view to switch to? I'm still new. Workspaces.
yeah,
So like I was in this view and
hmm
oh okay. How do you switch back
so this
to
is
this?
so you can now just press H if you want to,
Okay. Okay. H
uh,
isn't doing
unless you
anything.
clicked
Oh, there
in.
we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
but like
Yeah.
right to the right of the address bar, there's
Yeah.
two panes side by side, and you can click that to switch layout as well.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. Full,
So
etc.
there's
Okay, yeah, I see.
horizontal,
Yeah.
vertical,
Focus
focus, which
and
is
full.
like your um, like the Chrome DevTools where you have one pane centered, and
Yeah.
then there's full, which is the browser view.
Okay, yeah. No, because this is what is because like typically what I've been doing is I've been working. I use Arc as my browser,
Hmm.
and I've been typically using Arc when I'm building out the page, and then I come into Polypane once I'm like, okay, I need to see it in the different breakpoints, and I didn't realize that I could switch to this full view. So like already like this can allow me to make Polypane my default browser for web development. I didn't realize I
Hmm.
could be in this view, which is pretty much similar to like what I would be doing if I was in Arc or another Chromium based browser. So that's
Yeah.
actually super helpful for me now because I've been literally switching between the two browsers like build something
Uh
out.
huh.
Okay, I need to do something responsive now or like with different sizes, open up Polypane, change some code and then see it. So I'm gonna it'll be some muscle memory, but I'm gonna try and switch my workflow to just working in Polypane now. So
So I can help with that because muscle memory is very difficult to change on purpose. I just sent
mhm.
you a link to an article that I wrote,
Okay.
which is called "Always Open Localhost in Your Development Browser."
Oh,
So
okay, cool.
the
I'll share that in
trick
the chat.
the trick with changing your own behavior
Yeah.
is to make the new default or the new thing the default thing.
Yeah,
So what
exactly.
this
Okay.
allows you to do is there's a bunch of tools that you don't want to make Polypane your default browser because
Yeah.
it's not very good as like a default Twitter, DM, Reddit browser.
Yeah,
Don't
exactly. So
don't
it's not
use
my
it for that.
default browser on my OS necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, but so you don't want to make it like the default browser, but you do want to make it the default whenever you do work on your apps,
Localhost.
and your
Yeah.
apps live on localhost.
Yeah.
So there's tools you can use to route different URLs to different browsers. Uh, People use them to make sure that like their work stuff is in one browser where they're logged in there, and then their other stuff is in another browser. You can
Yeah.
also use that to always open localhost in Polypane, and then you
Okay.
just never have to think about it again. Like you start your dev server that probably launches your browser, and because you configured these rules, it no longer
Okay.
launches Arc, but it launches Polypane.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's super useful. I'm definitely gonna check this out after. Okay, cool. Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, I mean, I'm on my work computer, so I'm typically doing web development. like other people, there's
Mm-hmm.
a social media aspect to my work a bit, so I do go on Twitter or like LinkedIn, etc. But yeah, no, this is super helpful. Um, cool, cool, cool. All right, okay. So this is good. All right, so already like my whole development workflow is going to change for the better now, which is good. The yeah, so like we kind of wanted I wanted to kind of talk through more features too, and I know you were saying like it can be a little dry just saying like Polypane does this or Polypane does that. So like
Mm-hmm.
I guess let's like if we go back to if I switch back to the H view here and I'll just take the full screen here.
Mm-hmm.
Um so I guess there's some other things here. Like there's a bunch of tools here, and I I can't zoom in for the folks who are watching the stream, but there's like the rulers. Like I think this, I guess I tried this the other day, and is it just I just specify a number and then it just starts putting it, and essentially um y- for this part here you just need to type them in, right? Or there's no
So
dragging, or
if
can you
you
drag it?
so if you press Command G,
Okay. Okay, for guide, I guess. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
the shortcuts cuts are hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Command R is obviously going to be reload, so
Yeah.
you have to get creative.
Yeah, 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 no, for
But
sure.
yeah, so now they all have guides
Okay, I see.
or
Yeah, yeah.
rulers,
Okay.
and then you can just click on them to add or remove them again.
Oh,
And
okay,
the
okay.
the, the little UI is just there to make it easier, or when you misclicked that it's 124 instead of 125, that you can just you
Okay.
know click the thing, press up, because the same arrow key functionality works everywhere where there's numbers.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so yeah,
Okay,
this
no,
is
this is
easier,
handy.
of course.
Yeah. Okay, no. Yeah, because I have a tool. It's not just for web development. It's called Xscope. I've used it for years and it has
Hmm.
guides and stuff, but it's not this is handy. This is like right in the browser.
Yeah,
A- and I know there's some browser extensions that do things like this, um, but it's kind of nice to have, you know what I mean, not have to load a million, like
yeah.
browser extensions just to get stuff. And so, like you were saying, just to dwell on the guides for a second here, if I miscalculated it, can I drag it or is it just re-clicking it to where I think it's good?
It's re-clicking. Yeah.
Okay,
I
I
I
see.
try
Okay,
not to add too many different interactions,
okay. And if I
and then
close
also
that,
look at what other drawing tools do when they and but then also like there's some interactions that I don't like, where, for
okay.
example, you need to drag a guide out of like the side of your screen and then release it where you want
Hmm.
it to be. That's always super finicky. I just
Yeah,
want to, because releasing the thing can also like slightly by a couple of pixels move your mouse, especially on a trackpad. Like that,
yeah, yeah.
I don't want that. I just want to like go to the thing and then click the thing. Um, so yeah, so I try to get like the best from other tools. Like
Okay,
option to inspect is something that all design tools have had for ages,
okay,
and Polypane is the only browser that has it. But it's super
okay.
useful,
Gotcha.
and you're going to use it all the time now because it's so much nicer than like right clicking, especially if you're like, if I see a website that has a nice font,
Yeah.
like I don't, and I use Firefox as my regular browsing browser,
Okay.
but I use the Polypane. I literally use the Polypane extension to open that web page in Polypane, just so that I can hover over the elements, hold Option,
Okay. Yeah.
and then it tells me what the font is. Like that's how I
Okay.
find out what font people use,
Okay. Okay.
because it's so much easier than you know opening the DevTools and then finding the element and then scrolling down to wherever they've put like the rendered font.
Okay. All right. Cool. So let
And
me
so I, I,
close
I
that.
try to add like all of those little things that you could need at some point, um, I try to add those in.
Okay. Cool. And then there's obviously some other things in here like grid and columns and rows. Um, I guess since I'm up in that area, and again, I can't
Hmm.
zoom this part in, so apologies for folks catching the stream. But so there's integrations. What is that exactly?
So right now there's only one, but it's an integration with marker.io, which is like an online. Um, they have a very fancy name for it, but it's like you're in your browser, you notice a bug, you make a
Okay.
screenshot, you annotate it, and you push it to Jira
Oh,
or
okay, okay,
Trello or whatever.
okay. Gotcha. Okay,
So
okay,
this
that's
this
cool.
adds that into Polypane, which is super useful if you use marker.io.
Okay, that brings up another question. So like marker.io is there? Is Polypane extensible where people could bring in a new destination, for example, or is basically like obviously a browser extension, somebody could build something and bring it into Polypane because it's just,
Hmm.
part of that. But like for third party integrations like that, is there some kind of API that people can tap into Polypane if they
Not right
wanted
now.
to?
No,
Okay.
no. This is like a custom integration that we did.
Okay.
Um, it's just me at Polypane. So, like building like extensible APIs to what is a pretty moving target at this point in time.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just like not something I can do.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. No, no, totally understandable. Just curious is all.
Hmm.
Okay. And like I said, since we're up here, we'll just kind of go through the
Yeah,
gamut of
sure.
things here. So I see the camera. Is that just using like the browser screen capture or what is
Yes and no. It's
okay?
like it's using electron screen capture, which when you get down to it, is also what Chromium use or is built in Chromium. But
Okay.
then there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm adding, like full size screenshots, and I do them differently compared to all
Okay.
the other browsers, because all the other browsers do them wrong in slightly different ways, and
Okay.
I try to do them right. Um, for example, by dealing with fixed elements, by dealing with animations, by dealing with things that scroll along with your page, by dealing with things that are dependent on your viewport size.
Okay.
So, for example, in Chrome, if you do a full size screenshot, it will just look at how high your page is and then make
Okay.
the page that high so that there's no scroll bar and then make a screenshot. But
Okay.
that doesn't work if you use, for example, height that is dependent on the viewport height. So if you have a
Oh, okay. Yeah.
block that's always like 50% of the height of your screen, then yeah, you can measure like the height of the full browser and then or the full page and then make the browser just that high. But that block is then
Okay.
now also going to be much higher. So you still end up not capturing a full page screenshot.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
Gotcha.
all like those type of considerations that I just built myself.
Okay. Yeah. And I
And
like.
then, yeah, as you see, there's also a very full featured screenshot editing tool. Like
Yeah.
there's
This is pretty
cropping,
impressive.
redacting. I didn't build this. This is Pintura by a friend of mine, Rick
Okay.
Schenning. Um, so um, the only thing I did is the top in or the bit in the top right there where it says, copy to clipboard, save as, etc.
Okay.
And then I configured a bunch of stuff that I wanted. Like there's uh, an emoji picker in there that I
Okay.
needed to add. And then there's some other tools to like annotate by number, which is something that QA people do a lot,
Yeah.
where they're like,
Okay.
first look here, then look there, then look there, like, and they want to go like 1, 2, 3, and I just need to make that easy,
Yeah.
because of course, like you
Oh, and
can
it's got
drag
undo.
text there or draw or whatever, but no one wants to do that for good reason.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of tools I added, but like
Okay.
99% is Pintura, and it works really, really well.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw while you were talking, but I was just doing like I did some cropping. I resized it.
Hmm.
It's got Command Z or Control Z to
Yeah.
undo. So it's pretty powerful for like it looks like you're getting a well, not looks like, you are getting a lot of stuff out of Polypane. It's not just, it's not just like here's different breakpoint views. There's a lot more to
No.
it, obviously. Okay.
Like
When
anything you could conceivably need building a web page, I try to
Yeah,
have tools for.
no,
And
that's
I'm
super
I'm
cool.
not done yet, but
Okay.
I think I'm pretty far along.
Yeah, that brings up another question, which Todd in the chat asked. Sorry, Todd, I didn't ask it before, but um, let me just scroll up. Okay, yeah, there's a few things. I guess uh, Todd was wondering when the next major release would be. No pressure, just curious. And he also had a question about oh, sorry, this is a joke. What is the hotkey for destroy overlay? It yeah. There's a I'm sure there's an delete accessibility feature probably, Todd, coming soon. Um, but
Gonna
yeah,
have
no,
to.
I guess
So
like yeah.
if you do things right in terms of accessibility, there's the opportunity for confetti in Polypane.
Oh
Maybe
no
I
way.
should also add like the opportunity to make explosions in Polypane for the right
Yeah,
elements.
yeah. No, that's cool. That's cool. Um, yeah. So like, I'm curious. So like, because I noticed a few things. Like you said, you work on this yourself, and I happen to be on the GitHub education website just related to work stuff the other day, and I
Hmm.
noticed Polypane's part of the student package, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool for you. I think
Hmm.
that's pretty awesome. Um, is have you been part of that program for a while now, or is that something fairly
Yeah,
new?
I
Or
think no, I think I've been there since 2020 or 21.
okay, so still, not too recent, but
Hmm.
that's pretty cool. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
for
so
folks who
it
aren't
that's
aware of that.
been yeah.
Yeah,
So
sorry, go
if
ahead.
you're a student, you can use Polypane for free. Um, and yeah, that's been really rewarding. Students send me cool stuff they built. I get to see that. They
Hmm.
get to encounter accessibility tooling way earlier than uh, most studies offer them, if they offer them at
Yeah,
all. So
yeah,
that's been
totally.
great as well. So it's a win-win, and I happily take on the additional support burden.
Yeah, no, and like for context for people who aren't aware of the GitHub education program, it's about 2 million students, which is quite a lot. But it's also, I mean, like you said, you're providing these tools for free to the students, but like, I mean, if it's a good tool, I would say people would probably be inclined to purchase these things later on in life.
I mean,
Um,
that's the idea. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, and I think once you get to a certain point, you can afford these tools. Like I remember when I started off with web development or even just programming in general, it's like I couldn't afford Photoshop, or like I had like like some cracked version of like Dreamweaver years ago, just because I you know like late in high school, or like pre-university, it's not like I had
Hmm.
like $600 or $700
Yeah.
to drop. I'm not saying it's good to use crack software. That's, to be clear, that's not what I'm saying. But I think people are getting better at offering better trials as well. Like um, the because I know, well, you gave me a free trial for a while too. This is a side note. I'll talk to you after the stream. But I was trying to
Yeah.
purchase it, and I think because you set up my account, I because I
Hmm.
tried to recover my password and it said the account doesn't exist. So anyways, I'll
Oh
talk
yeah.
to you after about that. But
Sure.
it's just like an email issue, I'm sure. But yeah, because I was on the
Yeah.
weekend.
So
You probably got a bunch of emails from me like, is he trying to hack the system? What's going on?
no, I'm pretty good with not getting emails about that if it
Okay.
doesn't matter. Like the one. So I do a lot of things to make sure that people don't accidentally get Polypane multiple times,
Okay.
because that's very stressful. And I know that I'm a relaxed guy that just helps them,
Yeah.
and sends back the money and stuff. But they don't know that in that moment. So I'd rather err on the side of them not having to stress about stuff, and then maybe
Yeah.
getting Polypane later, um, than the opposite, because that's how I want to treat people. But then
Hmm.
coincidentally, that's also how you avoid like chargebacks, etc., which cost a
Yeah.
lot of money for vendors.
Yeah. That I'm aware of. Not an industry I'm in, but have some friends, some guys I used to play rugby with, and they work at a payment processing company, and
Hmm.
chargebacks are like one of the biggest things that are always occurring. So if you can avoid them, definitely. So
Yeah, and it just so happens that being if you do right by people, then you don't get chargebacks.
yeah,
So that works out.
yeah, no, totally. And a side note, but Todd said he found the Easter egg with the confetti.
Cool. I,
Is
I
it?
I can give you like a second Easter egg if you want.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So press Command K
Yeah.
and then type confetti.
Ah, command palette for the win. Woo. Is that what you ship? Is that the build you sent me just before the stream, or was
No,
that
no,
already
no.
in there? Okay.
That was already in there.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
that's been in there for a while. The command palette.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
No,
Um.
I noticed. I did a big release on Thursday.
Okay.
But as always with big releases, you notice bugs like right after you press the ship button.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
unlike websites, you can't be like, "I'll just push another update." Uh,
Yeah.
you need
Oh
to
yeah.
wait a while.
Yeah, no, that's a good question because I forgot about that because like you're shipping an Electron app, and even though there's web assets, the web assets are local. They're not like a website running
Hmm.
externally somewhere, right? So it's not
Yeah.
like you could say, "Oh, let me update the website," and then the Electron app's going to consume the updates. So
So
everything is local.
for me, they are, yeah. So there
Okay.
are Electron apps that are way more advanced, that can do like streaming updates, that that will essentially just ship the shell and all the interactions that they need with the operating system, and then download the app itself from a
Okay.
server somewhere, and then stream in updates as they come in. I'm not that advanced. You just get
Okay.
like a big old JavaScript bundle that you download and that executes when you
Okay.
open the app.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's nothing wrong with that. It's and I guess we didn't really talk about it too much because it's not about the product per se, but I am curious, like obviously like you mentioned it's built with Electron. What's the packaging story for there? Is it using like Webpack or something else, or using Vite, or like how
So
it I don't I don't remember how Electron apps bundle, to be honest.
I mean, so the Electron apps have a couple of steps.
Okay.
Again, like the thing you see is just a web app. So you bundle it just like a web app. There are some things that don't matter as much. For example, it doesn't really matter if I have one huge JavaScript file instead of a couple of smaller ones, because
Okay.
I don't need to do incremental loading. I don't get the benefit of HTTP2 because
Okay.
it's just local files.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But you still want to concatenate, you still want to minify, you still want to do all those things. So I started out using Webpack. I think at that time it was like Webpack 2.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I updated all the way to Webpack 5. But like
Okay.
around
So pretty
Webpack
recent.
4, things started to get like 10 times as slow for no reason.
Yeah.
So sometime, I think a year ago or so, I moved over to Vite,
Okay.
uh, and now everything's fast again. And then, hopefully it'll stay that way for quite a long time. And if not, we'll move to something else.
Yeah, no, I think Vite's a good choice. The like getting back to what I was saying, how I worked on the frameworks team at Netlify. Mo Most meta frameworks are being built on top of Vite these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think Next.js is the outlier. They're using TurboPack, but which
Mm-hmm.
is like I guess
I mean,
the successor to Webpack,
yeah.
but there's like such a huge ecosystem in Vite as well, and I guess again, not about Polypane the app itself, but I'm curious, like the development process. Do you get, because it's obviously web dev technologies? Because like at least from what I remember, I was using Webpack, and so like we would get like the hot module reloading and everything. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is do you get all those benefits as well
Yeah.
when you're
I
doing your
mean, it's
development?
it's
Okay.
almost like developing like a modern web page with hot reloading, etc.
Okay.
Um, the only thing that I can't do while developing is, because Polypane needs to interact with the website so much,
Yeah.
and all of that is event based. So
Okay.
all
Yeah.
of that also gets like destroyed when hot module reloading comes in. And it's like this bit of DOM, trash it.
Oh yeah.
Now this
Yeah.
bit of DOM. So there's some stuff there that doesn't work perfectly, but it's also just not going to work perfectly
Yeah.
ever, unless I build my own hot module reloading, which I'm not gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
It's
just have to
that's
deal
the
with that.
compromise, I guess.
But then also, um, like when I used Webpack, when I got all the way to Webpack 5, it took 2 minutes to launch my dev version of Polypane.
Ooh, wow. Ouch.
So then it became really annoying when I had to restart the app to test new stuff. But now with Feed,
Hmm.
it's like a couple of seconds and it's back up. So it also doesn't matter. I can just quit the app and restart it and carry on.
Yeah. Okay. And we didn't even touch on this, but like, so you're using Vite, but what is the app itself? Like, are you using like, are you using a, not necessarily a meta framework because it's built into Electron, but like, are you using something like React for building this out, or is it just
Yeah, it's
plain
it's it's
HTML with
all React
JavaScript? Or
based.
oh, okay, cool, cool, cool.
Yeah, so this
Okay,
app started with React 0.14,
okay.
and by the time there were other frameworks that were cool as well. There was already so much stuff written that I didn't want to rewrite all of that again. So
Hmm.
it's running on React 18 now. Um, so I keep everything up to date, um, but I still use a ton of class-based components because they're great, and they
Yeah,
do
yeah,
exactly what I need them to do.
yeah. Okay,
And we'll
no, that's
see how
cool.
that goes with React 19, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, I think they said, I saw the tweet the other day from Andrew Clark. I think they said they're looking to ship React 19 at the end of the year or close to the end of the year
Hmm.
with like all the nice things like React Forget and stuff. But yeah, it's true. I guess class-based components are still supported. You don't need to use hooks. You can just use component did mount and all
Hmm.
those yeah, and the other thing too is like you started writing this application like years ago, so unless there's like a direct benefit of converting everything from class-based components to function components,
Hmm.
there's no need to, I guess,
No,
So
so I do use function components as well, where I write new stuff and they make sense.
yeah.
But one of the things that function components just don't do very well is controlling the flow of reloads,
Okay.
and you get direct access to that with class-based components. Um,
Yeah.
and that's why they're making React Forget, because that it's a pain to do or to manage yourself in functional components.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some really bad functional components where um, Polypane has a ton of inputs, but those inputs need to be fed from different sources. So, for
Okay.
example, if you have color in the elements panel, then you can type in the color,
Mm-hmm.
and then it needs to apply that color, but then that color gets converted by Chromium and then sent back, and then we need to
Okay.
update that input with the newly generated color, so we need to swap that out.
Okay.
But then also there's a UI, a color picker, that also needs to update that input. So there's a bunch of stuff where I just need to be very mindful of like having
Okay.
an input that you can edit. So
Mm-hmm.
and that then emits changes
Okay.
that apply CSS, that then emits that style has changed, that then
Okay.
applies the value of that CSS into the same input.
Okay. Okay.
And you don't want to loop there. You want it to stop at some point. So there's
Yeah.
just a lot of hairy stuff there. And then for the address bar, it's the same. Like you can type in it to apply the URL to load pages, which is
Mm-hmm.
essentially like apply the URL to the panes. But then if the URL in the panes change, that needs to also be reflected in the address bar, but
Okay. Yeah.
not necessarily, because you can also be typing in the address bar, and if then the URL changes while you're typing,
Okay. So
that's
you got to
broken.
manage the different
So
states. Okay.
yeah, so there's a lot of things that get pretty complex pretty quickly when it comes to like browser stuff that you
Okay.
really don't notice in regular browsers. So for example, in Polypane 18, I implemented like type ahead suggestions into the address bar,
Okay.
where you type like PO and then it'll have lipane.app like selected.
Okay.
So you can just press enter to go there, or press another word or another letter um, to continue typing.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
then, what do you do if you then blur out of the address bar? Does that selection just get unselected and become part of the URL? Or does that
Okay.
selection disappear? Or, what happens if you uh, go through your suggested things and one of them matches perfectly, but then you go back? Do you like start appending stuff? It's
Okay.
all
Yeah.
sorts of like very complex things that class-based components make really easy to go through the flow and be like, okay, I just did an edit, so in my component did update, I can see that my incoming change
Yeah.
is etc.
Yeah, instead of like saying a use effect where like okay, depending on these bunch of things, then do something and
Yeah, you're gonna
yeah,
have like a use effect that goes to a use callback that then checks a ref that
and then you might need to memoize it because for whatever reason and
yeah,
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 okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I gotcha, I gotcha. Cool. Yeah. No, it honestly sounds super cool. I mean, obviously that part's all closed source, I imagine, because like obviously this is
Hmm.
your product, but it sounds like it's a pretty interesting tech stack, and yeah, the project's really cool. I've been enjoying it. I've been finding it super useful. So I'm like I tried a couple other things before, but I just didn't stick with them. But
Hmm.
I'm definitely gonna give Polypane a go. And like I said, after the stream, I'll speak to you briefly just to sort out my
Sure.
email so I could actually buy it because I was like I was on my work computer and I think you gave me a generous trial because we were gonna do the stream, but I was like, oh, I wanted to use it on my personal computer, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just go ahead and buy it, and then like it, anyways, we'll talk about it after. It
Sure.
just there was something up with my email because I had registered with GitHub, I think, or I don't know what happened,
Hmm.
but anyways, you'll get my money somehow, is what I'm saying.
Thanks.
Cool, cool. Well, listen, we're at like an hour and a half, which is usually the lengths of the streams. And I do have to get back to some feature work, which I'll be
Yes.
using Polypane for. That's a good plug there. Um, for I don't know if you just wanted to mention anything else before we wrap things up. I know Todd had was wondering when the next major release was, but I think you said there was one last Thursday. Is that right?
Yeah, I think Todd's just teasing.
Oh, okay,
Um,
okay. Yeah, I
that's
couldn't I
fine.
couldn't tell
That
sarcasm in
like
the chat, I guess.
the next major release will be in about 8 weeks, because
Okay.
my major releases follow Electron's major releases,
Okay.
um, which in turn follow Chromium's major releases. So major releases in Polypane mean that there's a new Chromium version underlying. Um,
Okay.
so Polypane 18, which are released on Thursday, is Chromium 122, which came
Okay.
out 2 days before that. So I always stay very close to the most recent Chromium, because then everyone
Hmm.
gets to use all the cool new tools.
Yeah, yeah. No, cool, cool, cool. Well, listen, this has been awesome, Killian. There's definitely a few things I already learned just going through the stream in terms of how to use some of the tooling. I'm definitely gonna dig into it more because I already see the value in this for my actual work. So, um, I dropped links for where people can give you a follow if they want to, and I also
Yeah,
linked to polypane.app. And yeah, if you're curious and trying it out, there's a pretty generous free trial for that, like if you're interested, there's always a credit card. Cool, cool. Yeah, no, thanks again, Killian, and thanks everybody in the chat. Thanks for the great conversation. And if you don't mind just staying on for a sec, Killian, and then
sure.
everybody else, there's no stream next week. I'm on vacation, but I'll be back with April Wenzel from that'll be in 2 weeks. So I might do a bit of live streaming this week for work, but we'll see. It's been a busy, busy time. So thanks everybody, and yeah, take care.
Bye bye.